When you get on British Airways flight number 5390A, a normal trip turns into a terrifying story of survival. In the middle of the trip, the unthinkable happens. The window breaks with a loud roar, and the captain is sucked into the unforgiving sky. Why? A mistake that seemed small. The bolts were not put on properly. Now, with winds of 600 kilometers per h and temperatures as low as -17 degrees, the captain is fighting for his life. As passengers are shocked, the question that keeps going through their minds is, will they beat the odds and make it through this nightmare flight? Come with us as we tell the exciting story of flight number 5390A's fateful meeting with fate. British Airways flight BA 5390, a BAC 111 aircraft, originated from Birmingham, United Kingdom, to Malaga, Spain, on June 10, 1990. The flight departed at 07:20 in the early morning with Captain Tim Lancaster, who was 42 years old, and co-pilot Alastair Atchison, who was 39 years old, in the cockpit. When the crew began preparing for the meal service, the aircraft had been in the air for 15 minutes, had reached an altitude of 17,300 feet, and was flying over Oxfordshire. Suddenly, with a loud noise, the airplane began to shake, and a strong wind entered the cabin, causing all of the paper and particles to fly every which way. The most unfortunate incident that took place was in the cockpit, where the windscreen on the left side of the cockpit, the captain's side, was blown off, causing the powerful winds to begin pulling everything out of the cockpit. Captain Lancaster was sucked out of his cockpit seat as his head and body were pushed outside while his knee was snagging onto the flying controls. This caused Captain Lancaster to be released from his seat. As a result of the door that separated the cabin from the cockpit being blasted off, the 81 passengers who were on board were placed in a precarious and concerning situation. It appeared as though the captain's half-body had been lying there like a dead person, and his clothes had been blown off. The icy cold wind, which was blowing at around 600 kilometers per hour and -17 degrees Celsius, caused his body to sustain a great deal of physiological damage. It had been more than 22 minutes since he had received oxygen, and he was in a state of severe distress as a result. Alastair Atchison, a 39-year-old co-pilot, was wearing an oxygen mask at the time of the accident. Steward Simon Rogers grabbed the captain's leg and clung to the air. The aircraft was just 70 miles southwest of London at the time. At its current location, the aircraft is under the command of Alastair Atchison. A distinct situation was taking place inside the cabin at the same moment. As a result of the wind blowing inside and the tremendous noise that they were hearing, the passengers were completely terrified and in a state of panic. The announcement that the windscreen of the aircraft had blown off was made by one of the passengers over the loudspeaker. As a result, it was necessary that an emergency landing be carried out. It was visible to the passengers that the body of the captain was hanging out of the window, and two individuals, including a woman, were clinging to his legs in an attempt to prevent themselves from being sucked out. During the flight, the aircraft was actually being commanded by the co-pilot, Alastair Atchison. Because the crew was able to see Captain Lancaster's eyes open, but not blinking whenever there was a strong wind blow, they assumed that the captain had already passed away. According to the instructions given by the co-pilot Atchison, the body of the captain should not be released and should be held as tightly as possible in the forceful wind blow. He was certain that if the body were to be released, it would potentially be swallowed by the engine, which would either cause the engine to stop or cause it to catch fire. While traveling at a speed of 600 kilometers per hour and a temperature of 17 degrees Celsius, the crew held the leg of the captain with great force. In the meantime, the situation was getting worse, and passengers began making loud sounds. The co-pilot had no other choice but to contact the nearest air traffic control center in order to request an emergency landing. He activated the Mayday, which ultimately resulted in the quick attention of the nearby Southampton control tower to make an emergency landing. The passengers who were experiencing terror were told to remain calm because the plane was currently performing an emergency landing. Around 7:55, the aircraft touched down on the Southampton runway, and because of the emergency situation, all of the ground preparations were ready. Because there were no severe casualties, passengers were evacuated without any delay. While this was going on, The medical team that had been waiting for it came and admitted the captain, who was subsequently taken to the closest hospital that had enough medical facilities. Because all of the crew members were suffering from shock and minor injuries, they were all moved to the nearest hospital for observation and stress treatment. The rest of the crew was also admitted to the hospital. Although the captain was experiencing breathing difficulties and was in a state of extreme shock, the captain's status remained stable. Because he was in good physical condition, he was able to survive the strong wind blow and the cold temperature that was outside the airplane. He was still alive. The British Civil Aviation authorities immediately announced that they would be conducting a comprehensive investigation into the incident. The report stated that the British Airways flight BA 5390, a BAC 111 aircraft, which was flying from Birmingham to Malaga in Spain, experienced a sudden explosion-like incident while it was gaining altitude over southern England. As a result, the windscreen on the captain's side of the aircraft blew off. Because of this, the captain was forced to suck out. The windshield was later discovered at Didcot, Oxfordshire, England, and the investigation team discovered that the windscreen had been refitted to the aircraft the night before with incorrect bolts, which were in fact 0.5 millimeter smaller than the exact one that was required. When the mechanic was replacing the bolts, he used the wrong one without first consulting the manuals, and he used the wrong one while under pressure. Because of this minor mistake, the windshield of the airplane was blown off, which allowed tremendous amounts of pressure and wind from the outside to enter the cabin. It was owing to loose bolting that the windscreen, which was made of a material that was extremely robust and composed of toughened glass, flew off, which caused the captain, who was not wearing a seatbelt, to flee the vehicle. Because this is a freak occurrence, the British Airways Pilots Association believes that there is no good reason to be overly concerned about it. The captain made it through the ordeal and was discharged from the hospital a few days later. After only 5 months of absence, Captain Lancaster returned to his job and continued to serve British Airways until he reached the age of 55, at which point he retired. Subsequently, he was observed piloting EasyJet aircraft, as he had been employed by the airline for some time. British Airways has installed bolts on windscreens of a number of BAC 111 aircraft from the inside as well as from the exterior. This is a safety measure that the airline has implemented. The Queen's Commendation for Valuable Service in the Air was awarded to First Officer Alastair Aitchison, as well as cabin crew members Susan Gibbons and Nigel Ogden. However, the name of Nigel Ogden was incorrectly left out of the supplement that was published. In addition, Aitchison was honored with a Polaris Award in 1992 for providing exceptional airmanship. Even though the plane arrives safely and the turbulence goes away, flight number 5390A's ordeal will never be forgotten. But even in the middle of chaos, lessons are learned about being strong, having a good attitude, and how important it is to pay close attention to every detail. This event should serve as a warning that every bolt and choice matters, both in the sky and in real life. As we say goodbye to this scary story, let's not forget to share its important lesson. Like, share, and subscribe to keep up with stories that move, inspire, and remind us of how fragile and strong life is.